Hi everyone. My name is Lisa, and I'm a 25-year-old medical student from Korea. Today, I want to share something really personal with you, my journey with an English conversation club. If you're someone who gets nervous about speaking English, especially with other people, then this story is for you. Trust me, I know exactly how you feel because I was there too. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be sharing my English speaking story on YouTube, I would have laughed nervously and probably hidden behind my textbook. But here I am today, and I'm so excited to tell you how joining an English conversation club completely changed my relationship with speaking English. Let me be honest with you from the start. I used to be terrified of speaking English out loud. I mean, really terrified. I could read English well, write essays without problems, and understand movies and podcasts quite well. But the moment someone asked me to actually speak, my heart would start racing, my palms would get sweaty, and my mind would go completely blank. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Let me take you back to the beginning of my story. It was January this year, and I was in my 3rd year of medical school. I knew that if I wanted to study abroad or work in international hospitals, I needed to improve my speaking skills. But every time I tried to practice speaking, I would freeze up. The problem wasn't that I didn't know English. The problem was in my head. I was so worried about making mistakes, about sounding stupid, about people judging my accent. I would practice simple conversations in my mind over and over again, but when it came time to actually speak, nothing came out right. I remember one particular moment that really pushed me to make a change. I was at a medical conference, and there was this amazing presentation by a doctor from Canada about new cancer research methods. After the presentation, I really wanted to ask her a question about her research, something I had been curious about for months. I stood up from my seat in the back row, walked toward the front where she was standing, and then I just froze. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I opened my mouth, but it felt like my throat had closed up completely. No words came out. She looked at me with kind, patient eyes and waited, probably thinking I was just gathering my thoughts. But I was so embarrassed and panicked that I just whispered sorry and quickly walked away, my face burning red. That night, I went home and felt so frustrated with myself. I thought, Lisa, you're smart, you understand English well, but you can't even ask one simple question. That's when I decided I needed to do something different. I needed to face my fear. The next week, I started looking online for ways to practice speaking English in Seoul. That's when I found something called the Global Friends English Conversation Club. It met every Saturday afternoon at a coffee shop in Hongdae. The description said it was a friendly, relaxed place for people of all levels to practice English together. I looked at that webpage for probably 30 minutes, reading the same information over and over again. Part of me was excited, this could be exactly what I needed. But another part of me was really scared. What if everyone there was much better than me? What if I couldn't understand their accents? What if they thought I was wasting their time? I saved the page and closed my laptop. For the next 3 days, I kept going back to that webpage, reading about the club, but I couldn't bring myself to actually go. My roommate, Mina, finally noticed what I was doing. Lisa, she said, you've been looking at that same page for days. Just go. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? I repeated. I could embarrass myself completely, say something stupid, and everyone would laugh at me. Mina laughed gently. And then what? Would the world end? Would you die from embarrassment? When she put it that way, I realized my fears were probably like monsters in the dark, much scarier in my imagination than they would be in real life. So, on that Friday night, I made a decision. I would go to the conversation club the next day, just once. If it was terrible, I never had to go back. Saturday came, and I almost didn't go. I changed my clothes 3 times, practiced introducing myself in the mirror, and even wrote down some questions on a piece of paper in case my mind went blank. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and sat outside on a bench, watching people go in and out, trying to guess which ones might be going to the English club. Finally, at exactly 2 p.m., I took a deep breath and walked in. The coffee shop smelled like fresh coffee and pastries. There was a group of about 8 people sitting in a circle in the corner, with comfortable chairs around a low wooden table. They had a small handwritten sign that said English Conversation Club. My heart was beating so fast, I thought everyone could hear it echoing in the quiet space. A woman with short brown hair noticed me standing there looking lost. She had a warm smile and came over to me. "Hi there, are you here for the English Conversation Club? I'm Sarah, and I'm one of the people who run it." I nodded and managed to say, "Yes, I'm Lisa. This is my first time." "Wonderful," Sarah said. "Don't worry, we're all really friendly here. Come join us." Sarah introduced me to the group. There was Mike from Canada, who was teaching English in Seoul. There was Yuki from Japan, who worked at a tech company. There was Ahmed from Egypt, who was studying at Seoul National University. There was Jinho, a Korean guy like me who worked at Samsung, and there were several others. What surprised me the most was that everyone seemed just as nervous as I was. Yuki spoke very quietly and sometimes stopped for a long time to find the right words. Ahmed had a thick accent that was sometimes hard to understand, but nobody made fun of him. Jinho made grammar mistakes, but everyone was patient and helpful. We started with a simple warm-up activity. Sarah asked everyone to share their name, where they were from, and one interesting thing about their week. When it was my turn, I had prepared something simple. "Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm from Korea and I'm studying medicine. This week, I learned how to make kimchi stew from my grandmother." It wasn't perfect, but I had done it. I had spoken English to a group of strangers and nobody laughed. Actually, several people said they loved kimchi stew and asked me questions about the recipe. Before I knew it, I was having a real conversation about food, and I forgot to be nervous. After that first day, I decided to keep going back. Every Saturday became my English conversation day, and slowly, week by week, I started to feel more comfortable. Sarah was really good at creating a safe place for everyone. She would prepare different topics for each week. Sometimes it was about hobbies, sometimes about travel, sometimes about current events. She always made sure that everyone had a chance to speak, but she never forced anyone to talk if they weren't ready. In my second week, we talked about travel experiences. I shared about a trip I took to Jeju Island with my family. I made several grammar mistakes. I mixed up past and present tense, and I couldn't remember the word for lighthouse. But Mike helped me by saying, "Oh, you mean lighthouse." And the conversation continued naturally. What I learned that day was something really important. Making mistakes wasn't the end of the world. In fact, when I made mistakes and people helped me, I learned more than when I spoke perfectly. The mistakes became learning opportunities, not reasons to feel embarrassed. By my fourth week, I noticed something interesting happening. I was starting to speak more naturally. Instead of preparing exactly what I wanted to say in my head first, I was beginning to just talk. My grammar wasn't perfect, but I was sharing my ideas clearly, and that felt amazing. One day in March, we were talking about our favorite books. I got so excited talking about a mystery novel I had read that I spoke for almost 5 minutes straight without stopping to worry about my grammar or pronunciation. The words just flowed out of me like water from a faucet. When I finished, Jinho said, "Wow, Lisa, your English has improved so much since you started coming here." That was the moment I realized that I was actually getting better. Not just my grammar or vocabulary, but my confidence. I was starting to think in English instead of translating from Korean in my head. It felt like a switch had been turned on in my brain. The real big moment came in April, about 3 months after I started going to the club. Sarah announced that they were organizing a special event, a presentation afternoon, where anyone who wanted to could give a 5-minute presentation about anything they cared about. My first reaction was panic. Give a presentation? In English? In front of everyone? No way. But then I remembered how far I had come in just 3 months. I remembered that scared girl who couldn't even ask a question at a medical conference. I wasn't that person anymore. I decided to present about something I really cared about, the importance of mental health awareness in medical education. It was a topic I cared deeply about, and I thought this would help me speak more naturally. I spent 2 weeks preparing my presentation. But this time, instead of memorizing every single word, I just prepared an outline and practiced speaking about each point naturally. I practiced in front of my mirror, in front of Mina, and even recorded myself a few times to listen to my pronunciation. The day of the presentation came, and I was nervous, but it was a different kind of nervous. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, I was excited and full of energy. My hands were shaking slightly, but it was from excitement, not terror. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, took a deep breath, and began. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about something that affects all of us, but is often ignored: mental health in medical school. For the next 5 minutes, I spoke with passion about my topic. I made a few small mistakes, but I didn't stop or get confused. I just continued speaking. When I finished, the whole group clapped, and several people came up to me afterward to talk about the topic more. Sarah came over to me with a huge smile. "Lisa, do you remember how quiet you were on your first day? Look at you now. You just gave an amazing presentation." In that moment, I realized something incredible had happened. I had not only overcome my fear of speaking English, but I had actually enjoyed it. I had connected with people, shared my ideas, and felt confident doing it. It was like I had found a key that unlocked a door I didn't even know existed. Looking back on my conversation club journey, I learned so many valuable lessons that I want to share with you. First, I learned that everyone is in the same situation. No matter where people came from or what their background was, everyone in that conversation club had the same goal: to improve their English speaking skills. Everyone made mistakes, everyone had moments of confusion, and everyone was supportive of each other. Second, I discovered that the best way to learn speaking is simply to speak. I had spent years studying grammar books and doing written exercises, but nothing improved my speaking ability like actually having conversations with real people about real topics. Third, I realized that making mistakes is not just okay, it's necessary. Every mistake I made taught me something new. When I said something incorrectly and someone corrected me gently, I remembered that correction much better than if I had just read it in a textbook. Fourth, I learned the power of regular practice. Going to the conversation club every single Saturday, even when I didn't feel like it, created a habit that made me practice consistently. Some days I felt more confident than others, but going regularly made all the difference. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I learned that confidence in speaking English comes from experience, not from being perfect. I didn't need to speak perfectly to communicate well. I needed to speak regularly, honestly, and with patience for myself. 6 months later, my life looks very different. I'm still the same Lisa, I'm still studying medicine, I still live in Seoul, and I still love kimchi stew. But my relationship with English has completely changed. Last month, I went to another medical conference. When the Canadian doctor finished her presentation, I walked up to her confidently and asked my question. This time, the words came out clearly and naturally. We ended up having a 15-minute conversation about her research, and she even gave me her email address to continue our discussion. I couldn't help but smile, remembering that scared girl from a year ago who couldn't say a single word. I've also started helping new international students at my university as a conversation partner. It's amazing how helping others with their English has continued to improve my own skills. Just last week, I had a video call interview for a summer research program at a hospital in Australia. A year ago, that would have been impossible for me. But I felt calm and confident throughout the entire interview, and guess what? I got accepted into the program. The Conversation Club is still a big part of my life. I still go every Saturday, but now I often help newcomers who are just as scared as I was on my first day. When I see someone sitting quietly in the corner, looking nervous, I remember exactly how that felt. I make sure to include them in conversations and encourage them just like Sarah did for me. If you're listening to this and thinking about joining a conversation club or finding other ways to practice speaking English, I want to give you some practical advice based on my experience. First, start where you are, not where you think you should be. I thought I needed to be perfect before I could join a conversation group, but that's not true. You start speaking practice at your current level, whatever that is. Second, find a supportive environment. Look for groups or clubs that focus on learning and encouragement rather than competition or judgment. The right environment makes all the difference. Third, be patient with yourself. I didn't become confident overnight. It took months of regular practice, and I still have days when I make mistakes or feel less confident. That's completely normal and part of the learning process. Fourth, focus on communication, not perfection. Your goal should be to express your ideas clearly, not to speak without any mistakes. People care more about what you're saying than how perfectly you're saying it. Finally, celebrate small victories. Every time you have a successful conversation, ask a question, or express an idea clearly, that's progress worth celebrating. I started keeping a little journal of my English speaking wins, and it really helped me see how much I was improving. As I finish my story, I want you to know that if I can do this, you can too. 6 months ago, I was a scared medical student who couldn't ask a simple question in English. Today, I'm someone who feels confident speaking English in professional settings, social situations, and even on this YouTube video. The Conversation Club didn't just improve my English, it changed how I see myself. It taught me that stepping outside my comfort zone leads to growth, that making mistakes is part of learning, and that connecting with people from different cultures is one of life's greatest joys. I want to ask you a question. What's one small step you could take this week to practice your English speaking? Maybe it's joining a conversation club like I did, maybe it's starting to talk to yourself in English, or maybe it's calling an English-speaking friend for a chat. Whatever it is, I encourage you to take that step. Remember, every expert was once a beginner, and every confident speaker was once scared of making mistakes. Your English-speaking journey is unique to you, but you don't have to do it alone. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it encourages you to take that next step in your own English learning journey. If you found this helpful, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with speaking English or any questions you might have. Until next time, keep practicing, keep growing, and remember, you're braver than you think you are. This is Lisa signing off. Take care, everyone.